Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 of building this do-it-yourself CNC enclosure for the Tormach 1100. The first video we kind of left off just getting the splash panels and everything off, and this one we're actually going to try and build the very bottom row of angle around these rims here, all the way around. And so it's going to come out a little ways in the front here. And that's because obviously your table comes out a little bit, and more importantly, when you open this up, it actually comes out a decent amount as well. Let's see. You kind of see that it sticks out a little bit further than the table even, so that's actually what's driving that maximum dimension. So before I get too into it out in the garage, go ahead and check out the CAD work here. First off, I want to say thank you to Tormach. Everything shown here is not my work. This is downloadable from Tormach's website, and it makes it extremely easy, and it's extremely helpful to design modifications and, in my case, an enclosure for it. It actually comes with the CAD drawing for the enclosure itself right here, and it's been nice to have a sanity check on my dimensions to make sure that what I'm thinking is kind of what they came up with as well. So without further ado, this is what I have so far. I told you in the last video it is extremely rough, and as you can see, it is. It's basically just 1 by 1 by 1/8 inch angle everywhere you can see. Everything kind of just overlaps right now. How everything's going to be mitered and cut and everything, and how it's going to weld together is kind of up in the air at this point. I've got kind of an idea in my head, but I didn't go through and model it all. So the basic gist of it is, as you can see, a cube with a little raised up area in the front here, and that's just to allow a downhill slope for any of the coolant that ends up on that pan there. And it kind of, having that angle there provides kind of some framework to make a pan out of sheet metal to go right here. I mentioned this in the first video that the angle will be, the upright portion will be towards the inside of the mill around the enclosure base. And so that's kind of what I've got here, where everything will be drilled and mounted here. And then I ran into an issue when I got to the front here that I'll need something to hold that pan in. And so I actually flipped, this is like 9 inches long, this little piece, and angled it up. So this joint here will be a little interesting to cut and weld. But I think worst case, if it's kind of a weak joint here, I will add some type of a gusset and it'll be okay. That's one thing. And then additionally, I'm planning on putting like sheet metal panels in all 3 of these sides, so the 2 sides and the back. And so I wanted everything to line up and be flush. And so like this upright, for example, I wanted it to be flush with the base here. And I also wanted it to come apart because I'm probably going to move in the next couple of years, and it could be to a new state. And so what I decided to do was just on the outside of the I guess the base, as you could call it, I'm going to weld an upright, and then I'll drill a couple holes, possibly 2 on each side here, and then I can bolt this one on here. Oop. Yeah, right there, so that this upright will be flush with the base on both sides, and that way that entire square area will all be flush, and a piece of sheet metal can mount in there nicely. So that's kind of the idea for the 2 sides. I think I mentioned it in the first video as well, that I'll want to have something over here that I can get to this. This is where the main power is on the machine. And then also the e-stop is somewhere up here. And I kind of want to just mount one. It'll be in parallel, I believe, with this one to the outside. So I don't actually have to remove this one or move it. I would just tee into those wires and have my own e-stop. So I'll have to look into how that's wired, but don't quote me on it being parallel. So that is the very basic frame. There will be more frame pieces going in here, probably 1 on each side of the mill head. That way, seeing as how it kind of goes up over the top like that, or the mill sticks out over the top. That way we can put a piece of sheet on the top up here and one on this side to cover most of the top, and then haven't really decided for sure yet if I'm going to do what the Tormach does and make kind of this raised up area and fully enclose it, or just leave that center section open. We'll kind of see as we go. Additionally, for the front, to have nice doors to mount to it, I'm expecting to have some uprights in the front, you know, this area here. And then I'll probably have more framework over on, it'll be the right side of the machine for like the monitor mount and keyboard mount. I want to have all that mounted to the machine. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at so far. So on this video, I want to cut this back piece and both of these side pieces, and then actually figure out this little angle, figure out how I'm gonna, you know, secure that so I can at least tack it and weld it, and then kind of go from there. So hopefully we'll have at least those three pieces, maybe the full bottom frame by the end of this video. All right, so first cut I want to make is going to be the very back piece along the Tormach stand. So that's what I've got set up here on the little red saw. All right, so this is that first piece just sitting on top of the mill here. You can kind of see angled here like a miter so that it can come out. So the next piece will be mitered to that, and it'll come to this end. And it's gonna run all the way back to the other corner. And so it ends over here. And then it's mitered as well. So one piece down, about 50,000 to go. So next step, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this piece here. So that the angle's right. So right now it's got the opposite angle on it. I'm going to just buzz that off, and then that'll match up with that corner, and then I'll cut it to length so it ends right here. And then from there will be that little piece that you saw in the CAD that's like 9 inches or so. That'll be angled up from there. All right, moment of truth. Are my cuts actually 45 degrees? I think this first piece is a little long. Oh yeah, they look like they're lining up pretty darn good. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now we got that piece. That's going to line it up to here. And then I'm going to go check my CAD, but I'm pretty sure I left this piece all the way out to this outside. And then I made the next piece that butts into it all the way to the inside. And we're going to have to cut off the upright part of it so that they can kind of blend into each other and be all on the same plane like that when it's all done. So this cut will be fun. I'll probably cut this one for that side next, and then we'll get into this crazy angle and all that fun stuff. All right guys, so we've obviously got the back, you've seen that. Now the sides, I actually cut the sides just a hair short, and I was kicking myself, but I kind of like it because that rough edge is kind of behind the smooth edge. So that one's good. And then here's my seam over here, clamped in place. So I think it's doing pretty good there. Could be a little tighter. This back piece was actually a little long, and then of course I tried to shorten it a little bit, and now it's a little short. Welcome to my life. So there might be a little bit of a gap there, or on the other side. I'm trying to just kind of split the difference. So that's the left side, and then the right side over here looks about the same, clamped in. And then yeah, this one's actually got a little extra room right now, so we could probably shimmy it back to the left just a little bit. And then I tried to cut it short after the first one. I made it short just to match it. And I kind of, like I said, I like how it's a little bit behind the smooth surface. All right, so I got done with all the cutting of all the pieces. So still got the back piece clamped to the mill right there, you can see. And on the ground here is the rest of it. So that will be, basically the back is missing right there, obviously. But then we've got the side here, and I went ahead and cut these little, they're roughly 9-inch pieces here. And then I notched this out with an angle grinder. And then I've got my front piece cut. So right here, I'll end up notching out this piece in the bottom right here to fit this piece, but I wanted to get everything welded up first so I can try and get it as accurate as possible. And then I've got the same thing going on right here. And so the next step, I think, is to tack everything together. So I'm a little nervous to weld with anything touching my CNC, just, you know, with all the electronics and everything that are on it. I read online that it's okay as long as you have your ground clamp on the piece that you're welding and really close to the weld, but I don't think I'm gonna risk it. So what I'm planning on doing is I'll put these side pieces up here first. So I'll basically get that where I want it, and then I'm just gonna mark across the seam with a Sharpie. And then I will slap my magnet on there to keep it right at 90 degrees, give it a tack, do that on both sides, and then I'll set it back on the machine and, you know, kind of adjust. If I need to tap it one way or the other, I can with a tack. If I break the tack, I'll re-weld it, but we'll kind of go from there just to be safe. I don't want to weld on the machine. So once those two pieces are welded on there, so I'll have one solid piece going all the way around like a horseshoe, then we'll start welding these little ends right here on. So those ones will be a little tricky because we got to try and keep everything square. Luckily, even according to the CAD, the rise right here is only about 1 inch. It was like 9.8 or something, so I just figured I'd call it 1 inch. Or not 9.8, 0.98. And so since my angle is 1 inch, I can use that as a spacer and basically just set the very end of the bar on a piece of scrap. And then it gives it that rise and that's just assuming that everything's sitting on a flat surface, which is definitely not a valid assumption in my garage, but we're working with what we got, so it should work out and be close enough. First tacks are done. They are not pretty, but they'll do. Got that one, and this one actually already broke and had to get redone, so it's really nasty. And now we are up to this part where, this is what I was saying, that the rise is 1 inch. So I just put my 1 inch angle underneath it at the very end. And then I'm using that magnet to keep this vertical part in plane. And then I'll probably just tack it right here on the outside for now. And it's a little dark there, sorry. And then when everything's said and done, I'll go across that bottom flange too to try and make it stronger. But right now, everything, we just need to tack it in. That's the first step. All right, guys, we got a decent preview of what this thing might look like in the end, at least the base. Check it out. So I already told you the back 2 corners are tacked, and now I tacked right here. There it is. I know it's ugly, I'm not a welder. Tacked there, and then I tacked on that side. That C-clamp's just there because right now this is a little bit out of square, so I just use that to pull it back out. And then just sitting on it is this front piece. And so you can kind of see the overall footprint. My garage is going to shrink a little bit more. There you go, it'll look something like that. As far as overall space sticking out in the front, that's kind of what you're looking at, a couple more inches. So my next step here is to notch these corners here and make this bar actually sit vertically like that. So my best idea at this point is I was planning on trimming this corner to be vertical. So I think at this point I'm going to take a level and set it up here with everything mocked up and just scribe a vertical line there that I can buzz down with the angle grinder. And then I'll use that as my guide to tip this piece up. And then the plan is to grind out the bottom of this so this will actually sit down flush with that and we can weld it. I'm a little nervous because it does seem like there's a decent gap there. I might just kind of fudge everything over a little bit to tighten that up. I cut this long piece based off of setting it on here and going across. And that was so that I could put my saw away and have everything cut. And I'm kind of regretting that right now because it does look like it's a little short. So, but I think it'll work. I think it'll look good. So, yep, same thing over here. And I gotta say, so far, knock on wood, it's looking pretty square. It's probably really hard to see on a camera, and I've got this thing set to the widest angle as possible. But even lining up with like the Tormach lines, you can kind of see that bar there. It looks like it's running pretty parallel to the table and to the bottom of the pan. Like everything's looking like it's lining up pretty well so far. All right, guys, just so there's some proof. This is just sitting on, not even the table, not the best reference in the world, but you can see bubble there is pretty darn centered. So that's my reference for the mill. Like, I'm assuming if I put it on my vise, it should be the same. See how the vise looks. It actually looks like the bubble's a hair to the left on the actual vise. But then we put it on this piece of angle that's going to be the front of the enclosure. See where, oh, here we go. And look at that, she is like dead nuts center. So I'm gonna say that she's in line with the mill, which takes away a lot of my anxiety about getting these angles right on each side. All right, there she is on the mill again. She's all tacked up. So I've got this corner here tacked. I ended up with a really gnarly gap right there. It's about 1/8 of an inch or just shy of 1/8. So I'm gonna have to fill that. That's kind of on both sides right now, but this one, at least it didn't have it on the flat piece, just on the vertical piece. And then other than that, I mean, looks pretty good. I guess I haven't put the level on it. Still looks good. So everything is looking good, except I did notice that this piece right here is kind of not quite straight with this piece. It's kind of bent out a little bit. It's probably really hard to show on camera because it's not very much. It's really just enough that there's no weld here on that side, that I can put a piece of plate on there that's also, or a straight edge on there, and you can see it'll wiggle back and forth. That's the extent of how out of straight it is. But I do think that being, you know, bent out a little bit is causing these gaps on these corners to be bigger. And with that being the corner that goes to my door right there and my toolbox and stuff, I kind of want to not get caught on it all the time when I walk by. So I think I'm going to break the weld on this side, because this is where the gap is the worst, and there's actually room on the bottom for it to come, for this bar to go that way. So I think I'm gonna break that weld and then come over here and just bend this one in a little bit and then re-tack this weld over here. Hopefully that all works out. We will see. So I ended up not doing what I said I was just gonna do, breaking that weld and kind of trying to shimmy everything over. I looked at this weld and I didn't realize, but it's obvious now, that this is an inside corner, which means that my angle grinder doesn't like to fit in there very easily. So I tried to just start bending it and everything. I was afraid if I bent like this piece down, like this direction, then it would break the weld over on this corner, which I would like. So it kind of turned into one of those moments where I figured I was just doing more harm than good, you know? So it's barely out of square and it's only on one corner, and you know, everything else is lining up. I really don't want to ruin all that by just trying to get it perfect. So at this point, I think I'm ready just to weld all this stuff up, so I'm gonna hit it. All right guys, so we've got it welded up. I told you I'm not a welder. That one's particularly, looks like someone just used too much glue. But yeah, it's welded, and now I'm gonna be grinding a lot of this garbage looking stuff down. But first, I want to go ahead and do another test fit. So that's one of them where I had to fill that bottom gap, and actually the gap going up the side was worse. Or no, this was the side where both of them were pretty bad. This is the side where it was only the vertical part. Then we had to fill a decent amount right there. So I just turned my wire feed up and my heat down and went at it. And it seemed to work. So I wanted to make sure also that I had good coverage all the way through each weld, because it's kind of the last resort for stopping a leak. Like ideally, this frame won't see any coolant, but if it does, it'd be nice if it stops it from leaking. Well guys, the test fit went well. Sorry I didn't record it, but since the test fit, I went ahead and I took it off and touched up a few welds, and then I ground down a lot of those nasty welds. So it's sitting down here on the ground again. I'll show you. Here it is. A little bit prettier. And once it's all painted, it'll look a lot better. That one I didn't get to because it's an inside corner, so we'll see. And this guy. So I think that's going to be it for this video, but progress is moving along, and I'm working on it as I have time, so hopefully everything will be done here shortly.